If you saw a key line, there's a key lime pie back there. And it's from, it's complicated, but involving, well, because when it involves something, Chair Peña-Mello and I have there's a key lime pie bet thing going on between the two committees. And so okay, we are streaming. Okay, never mind. Strike what I just said. Okay, guys. Okay, we've got some voting to do here, and hopefully we can be efficient. Senator Brooks will be a little bit late, but I think we can just proceed without him, and he'll be here in due course. Okay, let's start. We do have
To the devil.
Oh, there he is.
In due course.
In due course. Okay, we're going to start with, we've got a consent calendar, those nice efficient things. Vote list number 38, which are a bunch of House bills that are identical to Senate bills that we've already passed unanimously in this committee and on the floor. And so why don't we start with the voting list number 38. So folks, take a look and see if you want to separate out anything. And if not, no, 38 is, consent list. Do you see a consent list number 38?
Take out 17.
Okay.
225 and 501.
Okay, we're going to take out 17, 225, and what's the third one? 501. Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Okay.
I'm sorry, not second.
501.
Okay, anyway, 17 is okay. So I'm sorry, Senator Carrozza. So Senator Simon Ayer specifically has now said he wants to take out HB 225 and House Bill 501.
Okay.
Not 17. So everything else is in play. Okay, is there a motion favorable on the remainder of the bills on the consent calendar? Senator Augustine, favorable, second from Senator Washington. Okay, all Senator Gallion, you okay?
I was just checking very quickly. Did we end up taking 17 out or not? Because I noticed it voted against that.
Okay, on the floor of the Senate or the floor of the House? Oh, okay. Well, then there were no votes on 17, Stacy? Oh, Alexis?
It was unanimous in committee.
Okay, it's unanimous in committee, but not on the floor. Okay, well then, why don't we do this? Let's take out 17, 225, and 501. Because there was a dissenting vote on the floor, or more than just one dissenting vote. Okay, so we have the remainder. That motion that we have from Senator Augustine, a second from Senator Washington, now will apply to all the bills on the consent list other than 17, 225, and 501. Okay, all in favor of the favorable motion on the remainder of the bills, raise your hand. All opposed? Okay, those bills carry unanimously. Now let's go back to 17, 225, and 501. Alexis, could you refresh folks' memories about these bills? We're starting with House Bill 17.
Give me 1 second.
Again, these bills passed unanimously out of committee, but then did draw a red vote or more on the floor, apparently.
All right, House Bill 17 is a cross-file to Senate Bill 274, which is a departmental bill requiring the housing element in a charter county and in certain code counties to include on or after January 1st, 2025 in their comprehensive plans, a fair housing assessment to ensure that the county is affirmatively furthering fair housing.
Are there any amendments of any sort, or is this the bill that is in front of us? Okay, questions about HB 17? Okay, favorable from Senator Augustine, second from Vice Chair Kagan. Any further discussion? Again, there are no amendments. And again, since folks took this off the consent list, I assume there may be some red votes involved. So why don't we'll do a roll call on House Bill 17.
All right, Senator Kagan?
Aye.
Senator Kagan, yes. Senator Augustine?
Yes.
Senator Augustine, yes. Senator Gallion?
No.
Senator Gallion, no. Senator Watson?
Yes.
Senator Watson, yes. Senator Lewis Young?
Yes.
Senator Lewis Young, yes. Senator Brooks?
Yes.
Senator Brooks, yes. Senator Carrozza?
Yes.
Senator Carrozza, yes. Senator Hester?
Yes.
Senator Hester, yes. Senator Washington?
Yes.
Senator Washington, yes. Senator Simon Ayer?
Yes.
Senator Simon Ayer, yes. And Senator Feldman?
Yes, bill carries 8-3, or no, I'm sorry,
10-1.
some there was, yeah, 10-1. Okay, I apologize, 10-1. Okay, let's go next to House Bill 225. Alexis, why don't you refresh everybody's memory about this one?
House Bill 225, Sustainable Growth Sub-Cabinet and Repeal of the Office of Smart Growth. This bill is the identical cross file to Senate Bill 309, which repealed the Office of Smart Growth and renames the Smart Growth Sub-Cabinet to be the Sustainable Growth Sub-Cabinet. It adds the Secretary of Emergency Management to the sub-cabinet, requires the Secretary of Planning to chair and staff the sub-cabinet.
Okay, questions?
This is the same posture.
Yep. Yes.
Okay, a favorable motion from Sir Augustine, second from Vice Chair Kagan.
My delegates all voted, so I just wanted to check real quick and if I'm good with it now. So if you just want to, we don't have to do a roll call.
Okay, we're on House Bill 225. A favorable motion is second. All in favor of House Bill 225, raise your hand. All opposed? Bill carries unanimously. And finally, House Bill 501. Alexis, refresh our
All right,
memory.
House Bill 501, Charter Counties Enforcement of Local Laws. This bill is the identical cross file to Senate Bill 522, which authorizes a charter county to enforce civil and criminal fines up to $5,000 for violations of county ordinances, resolutions, and bylaws.
Move favorable.
Okay, a motion from Sir Augustine, second from Vice Chair Kagan. Discussion? Yeah, question, Senator Simon.
Just one other
Sure.
thing. This is the same form that we,
That's right.
okay. And again, I apologize for it. I just noticed my delegates voted against it, so I just want to look at it real quick and I'm okay with it.
Okay. Okay. That said, all in favor of House Bill 501, raise your hand. All opposed? HB 501 carries unanimously. Let's next go to the, we have a series on 30, list 39 and 40. We have several cross files and then a couple standalone bills. Let's start where we left off on Friday with Senate Bill 653 from Senator Augustine. The cross file is House Bill 1101 from Delegate Love. Why don't we forget how we left things with the amendments and all the posture process wise. Sir Augustine, how did we, I don't recall.
We had adopted some, but I think that Dara actually has an updated sponsor amendment.
One of your two standalone packages, and me, the amendment number 1 on page 1 in the sponsor line adds Senators Elfrith, Smith, and Washington as co-sponsors of the bill. There are no other substantive changes. I can give a Senate Bill 653 and House Bill 1101. And Washington.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Okay, these are drawn to the Senate bill, these sponsored.
it's
Yes.
both,
Right.
right? And
Well, the
The Senate.
not the,
sponsors are going to
yeah,
the
I'm
Senate
sorry,
Bill.
the
The-
sponsorship amendment.
In
correct.
this package is amendments made to Senate Bill 653 and House Bill 1101 that they'd be in exactly the same posture. If you turn to page 10 of the package, there is a reprint of how both bills would look with the amendments in the package.
Okay, so first, let's take up the amendments that would make the two bills look in the same
Okay,
posture.
let's
So
move
we'll
favorable on the amendments.
to Senate Bill 653, we'll start with, is that correct, Tara? So any questions on the amendments from Senator Augustine on Senate Bill 653 that would put them in the bills in the same posture? Discussion? And let me add also that since the Friday voting session, my understanding that the folks who were opposed to the bill are no longer opposed to the bill.
Right.
If you recall, Mr. Enton was here and they, as a result of some conversations, they no longer, they're standing down. So they're, I think with that piece of information. Okay, so we have the amendments in front of us. I'm sorry. Okay, yes. Okay, we have motion favorable on the amendments and a second from Vice Chair Kagan. Okay, all in favor of the amendments, raise your hand. All opposed. Okay. Those amendments carry. We now have Senate Bill 653 as amended. Now, one more sponsorship amendments. We didn't take up, let's take a separate vote on the sponsorship amendment. Okay, Senator Augustine moves those sponsor amendments second from Vice Chair Kagan. All in favor of the sponsor amendments, raise your hand. Okay, so those amendments will also go on to the Senate bill. Is there a motion favorable?
And I will, in keeping with what the chair said, over the course of the weekend, definitely spoke with members of the committee, but also did speak with the Mr. Enton, where NAOP and the builders are now in a neutral position. My understanding as well is that Mako is also no longer, they're more into a neutral position. We really did tailor this down, this final bill down, to really just setting this space for citizens to what it was less than 12 months ago, which allows for citizen suits in this very narrow window of spaces where there's water, but that water, with the change in the definition from the Supreme Court, remove these from the ability to have these citizen suits in these places where water is not always permanently there, but really is a part of the water shed and the water systems. And so it's very appropriate. And so, like I said, that's why I moved it, and I hope we'll get a second.
I think the vice chair, who had a second? We had a second from vice chair. Okay, let's, again, like we've done with some other crossfires, now that this bill's in the same posture as the House Bill 1101. So this vote will count for a vote on both bills. I think that's efficient. And because notwithstanding there's no longer opposition, there may be some pushbacks. We'll do a roll call, but we're going to, Senator Gallion, you have some questions, notwithstanding what we just said.
Probably statement than anything. Appreciate the dialogue, and we debated this and talked about this some Friday already. So, I appreciate that, there's less opposition there. I still have some issues, but my understanding, as we dug more into this is pertaining to folks that are under MDE permit. So as far as agriculture goes, it looks like it's focused on the CAFOs, which are consolidated animal feeding operations. If you're looking at the vice chair there, she's wondering what the CAFOs were. So there is a concern that I have that, now the state will be able to do something they couldn't do before through litigation here. So that's my major concern. I think there was a case down the Eastern Shore a few years ago. I think it might have been Hudson, where basically a farmer down there went bankrupt trying to defend themselves from different charges, and then they end up losing their farm. So, I don't want to be appearing like I'm trying to take up for a bad actor or two, because I really don't want to obviously do that, because that makes all of us look bad when you have one or two bad players. But just that concern is a little too much for me to be comfortable voting for this bill. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there. Thank you.
Further discussion, conversation, questions? Okay, we're going to do a roll call on, again, we're talking about Senate Bill 653 and House Bill 1101. And we're going to do a roll call, Lamore.
All right, Senator Kagan?
Aye.
Senator Kagan, yes. Senator Augustine?
Yes.
Senator Augustine, yes. Senator Gallion?
Yes.
Senator Gallion, no. Senator Watson? Senator Watson, yes. Senator Lewis Young? Senator Lewis Young, yes. Senator Brooks?
Yes.
Senator Brooks, yes. Senator Carozza?
No.
Senator Carozza, no. Senator Hester?
Yes.
Senator Hester, yes. Senator Washington?
Yes.
Senator Washington, yes. Senator Simonair?
No.
Senator Simonair, no. Senator Feldman?
Yes, the bill carries those two bills carry 8-3. Okay, next up, I'm going to bring Evie up from MEA. We're going to go to Senator Elfreth's bill that she gave us a briefing on, a bit of an update as to the current posture of the bill. And Evie was very involved. If you recall, this is the result of a task force that met during the interim to try to get our solar industry up and running. There was a lot of collaboration, a lot of discussion. Mako was involved, a lot of the various stakeholders in the solar industry. And the net result of all that, and this also is a bill that's got to go through B&T. I think they're meeting this afternoon on this one, Senate Bill 783. And so with that, I guess, Alexis, if you want to maybe to refresh everybody's memory about this, again, attempt to jumpstart the solar industry in a couple of different respects. There's some tax incentives involved. There is something called a multiplier effect involving the SREC market that gives certain kinds of preferred siting a little extra push when it comes to trying to develop projects. But let me just emphasize a couple things right off the bat. And I'll say this maybe on the floor. Key here was not to reward or incentivize activity that's already happened. It's to jumpstart that part of the solar industry. We're specifically talking about rooftop solar. We're talking about parking canopy, and we're talking about brownfields, places that are more difficult to finance and where some extra incentives can make the big difference. So that's, I think, number one. We've also tried to do it, in a way, sort of in collaboration again with MACO, MML, et cetera, at all times being sensitive to ratepayer impacts. There were proposals at the beginning of this process that would have had significant ratepayer impacts. Those proposals were not accepted by the task force, then later by a lot of the folks involved in this discussion. And so I think on balance, it's a good product with a lot there. I'm not really sure at this point who, if anybody's necessarily even opposed, because some of the conversations involving Minority Leader Hershey had some issues. Those portions of the bill were removed, similar with MACO. As far as the tax incentives, those were an agreement through a collaboration and discussions with MACO, MML. So I don't think they're opposed to these parts of those portions of the bill. That's just a big backdrop. So Alexis, I'll turn to you just if you want to rehash. If you recall, Senator Elfreth showed up with a matrix kind of outlining the amendments, and Evie, you were here answering questions. So if you want to maybe, I guess I'll just, since Senator Elfreth was here, I guess it was just on Friday. Do people have questions of Evie from MEA? She was involved in putting this product together in the task force, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe that's an easier way to start rather than rehashing the whole bill again. Okay, well, that said, Alexis, there are amendments.
Yeah.
And I think Senator Elfreth walked us through those amendments on her big spreadsheet on Friday.
Page 10.
Yes, page 10. Okay, why don't you, I'll yield to you. Why don't you tell
Okay.
everybody? And then Evie's here for questions on any part of these amendments.
So starting with the amendments on page 10 of the voting list number 40 packet, the amendments delay aggregate net energy metering cap increases to July 1st, 2025. The amendments allow the program to issue certified SRECs instead of additional SRECs. Eligible certified systems may have a capacity of 5 megawatts or less instead of 2 megawatts or less. And additionally, they must either have a capacity of 20 kilowatts or less if their aggregate net metered, have a capacity of 2 megawatts or less, or have capacity between 20 kilowatts and 5 megawatts if the system is a rooftop solar, parking canopy solar, or brownfield solar array. The total cap of certified systems in the program is changed from 330 megawatts to 300 megawatts for systems less than 20 kilowatts, and from 300 megawatts to 270 megawatts for systems between 20 kilowatts and 5 megawatts. The certified system remains eligible for REC compliance for 15 years. The amendments require a transfer of up to 10% of the solar ACP fees for administration of the C Fund, Strategic Energy Investment Fund. For taxes, the changes include a community solar facility may have a capacity up to 5 megawatts for a local tax exemption, assuming it meets other requirements, including agrivoltaic usage. And additional tax assessments are in effect on or after July 1st, 2025. Finally, the provisions for payment in lieu of taxes have been removed from the amendments.
Yeah, I should have also added Senator Brooks was on that task force as well. And then also, whether it was pandemic, inflation, interest rate environment, supply chains, the economic sort of conditions for the solar industry have been very challenging. They're only going to get more challenging starting next year when we have this step down under our renewable portfolio standard. The value of these renewable energy credits are going to go down. And that's just, again, a little backdrop. Under current Clean Energy Jobs Act, we're supposed to get to 14.5% solar by 2030. If we do nothing, we're lucky to get to half of that. So this bill, I think the sponsor indicated, would get us at least maybe to 10, 11, maybe not to the 14.5. So that's just, again, a little context. With all that said, a discussion, questions for Alexis or for Evie on the amendments? Okay, we have a motion favorable on the amendments from Senator Augustine. Is there a second from Senator Brooks, who was a member of the task force? Questions, discussions? Okay, all in favor of the amendments, raise your hand. All opposed, the amendments carry unanimously. Do we have a motion? Okay, SB 783 as amended is in front of us. Is there a second from Senator Brooks? Okay, any discussion, questions? All in favor of Senate Bill 783 as amended, raise your hand. All opposed. Okay, 783 carries unanimously. Let's next go to back to, and that was a stand, that bill had no cross file. Now let's go back to cross files. We've got Senator Kagan's bill, Senate Bill 492, and the cross file, which is which one is House Bill 522. So we're going to go to you, Stacy, on Senate Bills 492 and House Bill 522.
Okay. Senate Bill 492, House Bill 522, Public Schools, Telehealth Appointments, Student Telehealth Appointments, Policy and Access. These bills require each local board of education to establish a policy to accommodate students who need to participate in telehealth appointments scheduled during the school day. Each local board must ensure that the local school system publishes the student telehealth policy in the student handbook and makes school personnel aware of the student telehealth policy objectives and requirements. On request, the State Department of Education must provide technical assistance to local boards to establish telehealth policies. There is one amendment offered. Well, there's an amendment to each bill offered, but the one that's in the packet is on page 2 of the Senate packet, which is voting list 40, and the reprint begins on page 6. And this amendment requires MSDE and the Maryland State Department of Health, in consultation with specified stakeholders, to jointly develop on or before December 31, 2024, state guidelines for school health services regarding the availability for student participation in telehealth appointments during the school day on the premises of middle and high schools in the state. It describes issues that must be considered in the development of the state guidelines and requires each county board to adopt and implement a student telehealth policy in accordance with these state guidelines on or before the start of the 2025-2026 school year.
Okay, Senator Kagan, do you want to add anything? You're the sponsor of the Senate bill.
This is going to address the inequities and access that students are facing now in our schools. Because if you're a therapist who has an expertise with dealing with young people, middle school or high schoolers who have been struggling for the last bunch of years, the after school appointments, there's a waiting list. And so how can we make sure that we offer these students the support that they desperately need? And that means in school. Well, in school, what's happening now is it's required that a parent or guardian pick up the student, take them off premises, and then obviously there may not be the confidentiality, the privacy, the access. And so schools would, with this amendment, schools would figure out how and where to provide internet access, a flat service to put down a laptop or tablet or whatever in order to have a telehealth appointment during the day. And all 24 jurisdictions would be able to work to figure that out. So I'd like to move the amendments.
Okay, Senator Kagan moves the amendment. And again, we're focused right now on Senate Bill 492, second from Senator Augustine. Senator Carozza. We're on the amendment to Senate Bill 492, which is cross-filed.
Right, I'm trying to catch up on the amendments for SB 492. I went back to the bill file, the bill hearing file, and it looks like the boards of education, the superintendents had amendments that I was trying to see if they were in this.
Yes. Thank you, Senator. MABE is okay. These amendments have been worked out with MABE. And Stacy, do you want to speak to that better?
So MABE, PZAM, the state board, they all had some concerns. There's discussions, and these are the amendments that came out of those discussions.
Specifically in their testimony, they talk about if amended to require the development of school health guidelines by MSDE and MDH instead of mandating the accommodation of telehealth services for students during the school day.
So what these do is these
State Department of Education and the Department of Health jointly in consideration with a very long list of stakeholders. They have to consider all of these issues, create these state guidelines, and then the locals will implement based on these discussions.
What is the, is there any language that addresses parental notification?
Yes.
So, yeah.
Where is that?
It's all in your amendment. If you start on page 3 of that packet, under paragraph 2, in developing the state guidelines, under this paragraph, the Department of Health shall consider operational, legal, and financial issues, including equity and prioritization of access, student and parental rights and responsibilities, including student privacy, informed consent, parental consent, and communications with parents.
It also, if I can add, Stacy, in the middle of page 7, the same page, but a little bit further up, B2, parents are specifically mentioned as people who should be consulted and involved in the process. And this sets up a process that would start in 2024, but not go into effect. It's going to give a lot of time to figure out the best process in each of the 24 jurisdictions. So it wouldn't start until the next school year, 25, 26.
So are these guidelines at the local or the state level?
The guidelines are created at the state level, and then the locals will implement their policies based on the state guidelines, which is what they asked.
So so this language on page 3, where you reference, it looks like it's in number 2, Roman numeral 2. That's the one reference to parents. And where was the other reference?
The other one's further down.
So it's up. There's a list of stakeholders also on that page, and that page includes local school systems, middle and high school principals, school nurses, health, behavioral health, and other support providers in schools, parents, healthcare providers of various practice areas, and the Maryland Consortium of Coordinated Community Supports.
So the purpose in the guidelines is to increase, and I'm asking the bill sponsor this, I think, is to increase telehealth services for students in healthcare across the board, and trying to address the fact that we have a shortage of these students being served by providers in person.
Not quite, but a lot of that is right. So the shortage is of after school appointments. And since everyone wants a 3 o'clock appointment, a 4 o'clock appointment after school, where they can go and have a therapy appointment in person or telehealth, whichever they choose, during the day, it's a challenge because, again, these therapists are all booked up for after school hours. And so what's happening now is they have to leave school property, missing more class time, and then they might be in a parental or, parents or guardians van or something, or in some place that's not too far away. It's totally not appropriate to have a therapy appointment with maybe the person who might be causing some of the trauma sitting right there with you. So confidentiality, access, security, convenience, and all would be addressed in this.
Meaning their telehealth appointments during the school day.
Correct. And it doesn't all have to be mental health. I mean, it could be a dermatologist. Can you look at this thing? But mental health is really the reason why this is so urgent. And our students are really having problems now and need access.
And just maybe just going back to the amendment with the guardrails with the parents, this will still allow the locals. These guidelines are at the state level, and then they're to be worked out at the local level. So if they want to they want to strengthen parental involvement, they would work that out at the local level.
They would have to adopt their policy in accordance with the guidelines established at the state level. Again, this is what the locals asked for. there was a multitude of issues that were of concern in adopting this policy.
When you said the locals asked for, are you talking
Maine,
about
talking about
the
Maine and
Maryland-
Kazam,
that
correct.
they asked for?
They asked for the state to establish guidelines to make it easier because of so many of the issues involved in setting up this type of policy. They didn't want to have 24 different policies. Especially providers don't want to deal with 24 different jurisdictions and how they handle this stuff. So this was the way of getting this bill through that the locals would be satisfied.
So what is the process then of establishing the parental rights and responsibilities? Who, once they're proposed and drafted, who reviews those?
The State Board of Education.
So
So this is a developed policy by the department and the Department of Health, and then the state board reviews the policy and they adopt the policy, and then the locals will implement their local policies based on these state guidelines.
So it allows
So
local control, Senator
MSDE, so
Caruso. with some-
MSDE proposes the parental rights and responsibilities that then is reviewed at the state level by the Board of Education. And that would also then, given that we're an oversight committee, would allow us to ask what the status of these draft guidelines.
Absolutely.
So again, the principals and the boards of education, the superintendent, not the principal, sorry. Kazam, the superintendents and the boards of ed. This is what they wanted.
For the amendments. Okay.
The bill as amended.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have, yes, Senator Simon.
Just following up on that. In the amendments, talks about parental rights, talks about student privacy, informed consents, which sometimes are conflicting. But it just says it shall consider. There's nothing guaranteed in here that parental rights will be protected. Is that a fair statement?
I don't know what you mean by protected.
That there would be parental oversight of this when they go
Although
telehealth.
parents will be on the panel in considering these issues, and presumably they will speak up and they will say, you know, we have serious concerns about a student A being able to do this without knowledge. And that's why there is this work group essentially to work through it, because there were concerns about health insurance and who provides, you know, medical histories and who does what at what time. So there is definitely, that's the whole reason that the locals had requested it. There was some serious concerns about all of these issues.
And if you could just go over that again, that panel, what's that made up of?
Sure. In this case, it would be the department and the Department of Health. And the stakeholders would include, and it's not, this is illustrative, not the only ones, but local school systems, middle and high school principals, school nurses, health, behavioral health, and other support providers in schools, parents, healthcare providers of various practice areas, and the Maryland Consortium on Coordinated Community Supports.
Okay, and that sounds very heavily school and medical with all the participants, and then parents. Is there any breakdown as far as how many parents are on this panel versus?
There's no breakdown on the number of people. It's the consideration of the multitude of issues involved in setting up a policy like this.
Okay, so the panel will discuss it, maybe some concerns. The state board will consider that, and then they'll come up with their policy, whatever that'll be. Is that?
Well,
fair?
they will recommend a policy to the state board for adoption.
Thanks.
Any
And
addition?
just, I just
Yes,
wanna
Vice Chair Kagan.
mention, and Stacy, if you want to add more to this, remember that this body passed telehealth during COVID to let young people have access to healthcare, and that was important. The big change here is the location. And again, it's still the same sort of access. It's just making sure that they don't have to leave school property and will have confidentiality.
Okay, any additional, Senator Washington?
Thank you. So Stacy, I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So on page 4, there's an amendment. Well, it's page 5 of our packet and section C. So the state board adopts guidelines, right? So it's not prescriptive, just sort of general guidelines, frames, insurance, probably just some broad things. Then C says that each county board, right, adopts and implements a student telehealth policy.
Mhm.
So that again, make sure I'm understanding, reinforces what the vice chair is saying, is that the local board ultimately writes the specific policy about who can do what, when.
Well, there may be differences between each of the counties and how their schools are set up, or issues about when certain resources will be available. And so I would assume that each policy would be based on those local considerations after consideration of the big issues by this, by the department and the Department of Health.
And certainly one or two of any particular constituency couldn't reflect the people, in other words, the constituencies, the elected constituencies, to address local needs in the areas of parental rights and all those would be at the local level.
Not sure I understand your question.
Right, I guess, right. And so what this amendment does is make sure that there isn't just the state board making the decision, that it comes back down to the local boards. And so
Like-
the extent to which parents issues are represented at the local level, that's where those decisions will be made.
I think what happened is there was a decision that some uniformity was necessary.
Right.
And in order to achieve that goal, you need to start kind of at the top. And given that some of these issues were important enough that they were going to be across the board from every jurisdiction, they wanted a broad group of stakeholders to look at it first, and then the locals can adapt it to their locals, to their local needs based on these broad consideration of all of these uniform considerations.
Right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any additional questions? Senator Caruso.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for these amendments. Turning to page 5, under
In the reprints?
in the
Is that easier?
packet, page 5 of the packet, number 40, with the amendments. It says alter the responsibilities of a healthcare provider regarding the disclosure of medical records, including the authority to disclose a medical record in the case of an emergency. I just want to better understand this altering of the responsibility and the disclosure of a medical record during an
Oh,
emergency.
so this is actually language that the House bill as passed did not include the majority of the amendments, but it did include this. What you're seeing on page 8 is the reprint. And so you'll understand that this was added to existing language where it says, nothing in this section shall be construed to, 1, require a school to construct an addition or a new space to a school building to provide a private space or comply with the student health policy or telehealth policy required under the section, or alter the responsibilities of a healthcare provider regarding the disclosure of medical records under Title IV, Subtitle 3 of the Health General article, including the authority to disclose a medical record in the case of an emergency.
Yeah, I'm asking what that means, that part.
Are you in the reprint?
I'm looking at page 5.
If you go to page 8, it might put it in better context. And what she just read is kind of exactly, when it's taken out of context, it's kind of exactly the opposite when you read it in context. If you look at line 22 on page 8, nothing in this section shall be construed to.
I think what they're trying to say is that this policy can't override existing law as it regards medical disclosure, records of medical record, disclosure of medical records by a healthcare provider.
Of whatever's already in place.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, Senator Augustine.
Thank you. I was just reminded, and I've just kind of lost track of it. Senator, there was a amendment, I think, that I shared with you on this, a potential one that dealt with telehealth and in-person, that came from the community behavioral health service folks, Lori Doyle, and she was supposed to reach out to you as well.
Rachel, did we hear from Ms. Doyle? Lori Doyle?
I don't recall from the first round. I do remember that the delegate Dana Jones did not be the amendment as read.
I don't have a copy. I don't have a note in here. in my notes and I don't, if you have do you have something written out?
Yeah, I do. Yes, so, and the thing is that the community behavioral health, folks have had, they've worried about the impact on the behavioral health folks who are not in the school and the impact that it could have on them. And I didn't know that this was, I hadn't looked closely enough at this, but she did share this amendment language that basically incorporated in person or portions of it that had to do with in-person visits as
So
well.
all of that, because of this extended timeline and because MSD is going to start the process, that would be totally appropriate to engage at that point, because this isn't prescriptive as to how it's going to launch in the 2025-26 school year.
Okay, so you're saying there's time?
I would suggest that there's time.
Right, so the bill becomes effective in July, but that's just for the MSDE and the department to start negotiations and discussions about these issues.
Mhm.
The policies themselves aren't implemented till just before the 2026 school year.
Mhm.
Okay, and so that will be back too then, right? I mean,
Well, presumably, if you're saying that the behavioral health folks want to have input, they're in the list of the stakeholders.
no, it wasn't input. It was specifically around in-person appointments and things like that, but it's fine.
So this is about telehealth, not in-person appointments. So I can't imagine that it would actually conflict. If someone wants an in-person appointment, that wouldn't be covered by this. This is only if they want telehealth.
Okay, so, and I don't mean to kind of go too long on this, but we have, in the space on behavioral health, we've had extensive conversations about the efficacy of telehealth versus in-person and the appropriateness and making sure that people also have the option. So this is really what it says here is telehealth and in-person, but I don't mean to slow down this conversation right now, so I'm sorry.
I can understand why the delegate would view this as unfriendly, because even though the efficacy concerns are probably very valid, this is just the availability of these appointments for these purposes. So if a person chooses to do an in-person appointment, they don't have to take advantage of an opportunity at school. That would be the only difference. This is just availability and how the schools are going to work out that availability.
Okay.
Since we had a fair number of questions about this, let's, we have in front of us just the amendments at this point on Senate Bill 492. So let's just do a roll call. So we had questions from.
All right,
On the amendments.
On the amendments, we're just on the amendments. We'll do a roll call. on the
Senator
amendments.
Kagan,
Aye.
Senator Kagan, yes, Senator Augustine,
Yes.
Senator Augustine, yes, Senator Gallion, Senator Gallion, yes, Senator Watson, Senator Watson, yes, Senator Lewis Young, Senator Lewis Young, yes, Senator Brooks, Senator Brooks, yes, Senator Carosa, Senator Carosa, yes, Senator Washington, Senator Washington, yes, Senator Simonaire, Senator Simonaire, no, Senator Feldman.
Yes. Amendment carries 9-1 and we have one absent. And so we've got Senate Bill 492 as amended in front of us. Again, we do have the cross file. So are they in different postures? Or they're with these
So
amendments?
I didn't include amendments in here because they're going to just conform the bill.
Okay. Okay, so again, this will go around the horn. Questions on Senate Bill 492 as amended before we take a vote. And this will count for a vote also on the cross file, which is Senate Bill, House Bill
522.
House Bill 522. Okay, everybody understand? Okay, we'll do a roll call on this one. Let's go around the horn, Memoria.
All right, Senator Kagan.
Aye.
Senator Kagan, yes, Senator Augustine,
Yes. No, I'm saying it's. Yeah. Thank you. Yes. Sorry.
Senator Augustine, yes, Senator Gallion. No. Senator Gallion, no, Senator Watson. Senator Watson, yes, Senator Lewis Young. Senator Lewis Young, yes, Senator Brooks.
Yeah.
Senator Brooks, yes, Senator Carosa.
No, and to explain my vote, I appreciate the amendments, but I'm concerned about how the guidelines would be drafted, so I'll be following up. Thank you.
All right, Senator Carosa, no. Senator Hester. Senator Hester, yes. Senator Washington?
Yes.
Senator Washington, yes. Senator Salmonere?
No.
Senator Salmonere, no, and Senator Feldman.
Yes, bill carries, those two bills carry 8-3. And I would note that, can I just, while we're at it, that fancy mug that Senator Hester is sporting, I just really like looking at it. It's okay, but don't put it on the camera. Keep it down, keep it down. Okay, let's go over to the voting list 39. We do have a piece of legislation that requires budget and taxation as the second, House Bill 1426 involving the blueprint education, and again, House Bill 1426. Stacy, we'll turn to you. And again, this has to go to B and T,
Okay.
so let's take it up.
House Bill 1426, Education Blueprint for Maryland's Future Alterations. This bill makes alterations to numerous education-related programs in the state, including pre-kindergarten, early childhood, professional development, and educator student loan assistance, and postpones certain reporting and related deadlines regarding implementation and continuance of the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. These include for Judy Center grants and Patty Center grants, authorizes the first year of multi-year funding if MSD awards multi-year funding to be used for planning and development purposes. It pushes the date by which the AIB must contract for an independent evaluation to December 1, 2026, and a corresponding report to the Maryland General Assembly and the governor to January 15th, 2027. Specified state and local funding implications that are triggered under current law in the event that the AIB does not report that the blueprint is being implemented as intended and is achieving expected outcomes are delayed from fiscal 2026 to 2028. It adds non-classroom teachers, including administrators, assistant principals, instructional specialists, and principals who earn national board certification. They must receive from the state in an amount equal to the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards fees associated with the initial completion and renewal of NBC, including a 1/3 county match for the purpose of growing the career ladder. It strikes provisions relating to the pre-kindergarten expansion grant. The State Board of Education and the AIB must limit the number and types of courses that a student duly enrolled at a public high school and at an institution of higher education may enroll in during the school year at the institution of higher education as part of post-college and career-ready pathway. It strikes provisions altering the Hoffman Loan Assistance Repayment Program to include early childhood educators. The date by which the Career and Technical Education Committee must establish statewide goals for certain student outcomes is altered from December 1, 2022 to June 1, 2024, and the corresponding report. It repeals obsolete provisions regarding the geographic cost of education index adjustment. For the 24-25 school year only, administration of the kindergarten readiness assessment to all kindergartners may be completed after October 10, and the results may be made available more than 45 days after the administration has been completed, and also corrects various erroneous cross-references in the blueprint statute. There is one amendment offered by the chair on page 7 of list 39 packet. Remember, this is the House version of the bill as passed. These amendments reinstate the pre-kindergarten expansion grant provisions to add a cross-reference regarding high-quality staff credential requirements and alter the dates for annual appropriations of the grant. It reinstates the Senate Bill 1102 version of the language authorizing MSDE and AIB to limit certain dual enrollment courses. And it strikes provisions providing that county boards rather than the state board must make certain determinations related to the career ladder.
Do we have one amendment, Senator Carrozza? Questions for Stacy on the amendment?
Thank you. Going with between the amendment and the bill itself, these are new requirements these are new requirements that extend beyond the current blueprint for this mandated funding.
Not, most of these are small changes that the AIB had considered over the course of the year and thought should be altered in the blueprint law. I'm not sure the funding, what funding provisions are you referencing?
Well, I was looking at the bill description itself, which I thought was described as a mandate for the funding for Judy centers. And then I was looking at when it says altering certain requirements and funding timelines, I was trying to understand what exactly were
Okay.
those
For
alterations.
the Judy centers and Patty centers, what if MSD authorizes multi-year funding for those grants? It says that the first year of those grants may be used for planning and development purposes. That's all it does. It doesn't extend any funding for those particular grant programs. It does under the amendments for the pre-kindergarten expansion grant program, it extends that grant out for a few more years.
But is the impact of this legislation with the amendments a new requirement and mandate on the local school systems?
No,
It is not,
no,
because you're saying they're already required to do this, or?
required to do which part? I mean, so with regard to the
I mean, we went
kindergarten
right to the,
expansion
we
grant.
went right to the amendments. I was first of all trying to understand the base bill.
Okay,
And then to see if the base bill was different from what the local school systems currently are required to do with the blueprint. That's what I was trying to
so
understand.
for purposes of local school systems, when you add non-classroom teachers to the NBC requirements so that they can be on the career ladder, then yes, locals would have to spend every time that one of these non-classroom teachers earns a national board certification, there's a state match and then there's a local match. So yes, locals would have to pay additional money for that there.
So that's a new funding requirement on the locals.
Right, it's an extension. Right now, it's only classroom teachers who are part of that. And this would add non-classroom educators.
Okay, Vice Chair Kagan, then Sarah Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Stacy, I'm curious about all the section on Montessori. And I'm sitting here looking at, I'm trying to research the number of Montessori schools in Maryland, and it is surprisingly hard to just find a list, even when I was asking for a list. So I'm on pages 8 and 9 of the amendments. And am I just not remembering that we had Montessori in the blueprint? Because I don't remember that, and I wonder.
Well, we did, because that's existing law, yes.
So we are. Can you just clarify, first off, how many of these are there, and the. I'm sorry, you're saying that all of this, you're right. Okay, so we're changing the year.
So if you look on page 8, which is you're looking at, the
Yes.
new language is up there under double I. What happens here is that we're making a slight change or a different cross-reference to the credentials for high-quality early education teachers. So because there's a companion bill coming, HB 1441, that's going to make some changes to some of the same stuff. This language here basically says that in order for a provider to qualify for those pre-K expansion grants, that their classroom staff, these teachers, have to meet certain credentials.
Right.
This language is just making sure that instead of having to change 2 different sections to be the same, it's just one cross-reference to a section so that so changes can be made only in one section. It's always consistent.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Sarah Washington.
Thank you, Chair. So we passed Senate Bill 1102, which is the crossfile. And so the amendments, it seems like, can you compare to what we passed? So there's a lot more that the House did to the bill. And are we conforming this to the House bill? But it looks like we're also making.
Well, we're
some
in the
additional
House
change-
bill.
I mean,
so that-
sorry,
right.
conforming this to the Senate bill.
So sort of. What
But there's
happened
some
is in the
additional-
House, their decision was to correct some erroneous cross-references, which is a lot. And so that's why there is a substantial increase in the number of pages.
Right.
So there's a lot of that is just making those types of corrections. There was the striking of the geographic cost of the education index adjustment that was stricken. They added in this bill the same KRA, kindergarten readiness assessment amendment that was added into the Senate bill. They added the dual enrollment limitation that was added in the Senate bill, but they didn't add exactly the same language. So this amendment makes it the same as the Senate bill.
And then the section about non-classroom teachers.
That was in the original bill and it's the same in both.
Right. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, additional questions for Stacy? Okay, we have one amendment. I'm sorry, how many amendments?
Yeah.
Just one amendment,
Mhm.
okay. Okay, we have a motion favorable on the amendment from Senator Washington. Is there a second? Vice Chair
Second.
Kagan. Okay, any further questions, discussion on the one amendment to, again, House Bill 1426? All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? That motion carries. We have 1426 as amended in front of us. Favorable motion from Senator Washington, second from Vice Chair Kagan. Discussion. Okay, all in favor of House Bill 1426 as amended, raise your hand. Okay, all opposed. We have got, okay, let's make it clear. Let's do a roll call on this one, Lori. I don't want any misstate anybody's position.
All right, Senator Kagan?
Aye.
Senator Kagan, yes. Senator Augustine?
Yes.
Senator Augustine, yes. Senator Gallion? Senator Gallion, no. Senator Watson? Senator Watson, yes. Senator Lewis Young? Senator Lewis Young, yes. Senator Brooks?
Yeah.
Senator Brooks, yes. Senator Carosa?
Yeah.
Senator Carosa, no. Senator Hester? Senator Hester, yes. Senator Washington?
Yes.
Senator Washington, yes. Senator Simonaire? Senator Simonaire, yes. And Senator Feldman?
Yes, that bill carries 9-2. Okay, let's go back to the Senate list. We've got, again, some cross files here. Senator Brooks got Senate Bill 1024, Stacy, and again, this is a cross file of House Bill 1219, which is Delegate Feldmark on the other list. Stacy,
Sure.
Senate Bill 1024.
Senate Bill 1024, Public Schools Cardiac Emergency Action Plan Requirements. This bill requires each public school to develop and implement a cardiac emergency action plan by the 2024-2025 school year. The plan must be annually reviewed and updated. The plan must identify the appropriate school personnel as the cardiac emergency response team to respond to incidents involving sudden cardiac arrest or similar life-threatening emergency on school grounds. Identify and coordinate with first responders and local emergency medical services to integrate the plan into local emergency response protocols. And 3, include specified evidence-based core elements recommended by an appropriate national organization. A public school may integrate the plan into an existing venue-specific emergency action plan under current law. There is an amendment on page 25 of your packet, and the reprint begins on 29. So what this does is it mostly conforms it with the House version of this bill, which is entitled the Public and Non-Public Middle and High Schools Venue-Specific Emergency Action Plans for Athletic Facilities, the Bailey-Bullock Act. So what the House did is move the provisions of this into a different section already involving venue-specific emergency action plans. So it integrates the sudden cardiac emergency response plans into this other plans. Essentially, that's really all of it does. And the amendment also removes the provisions mandating it for non-public schools.
Okay,
Removes.
Senator Carosa, you had a question on the amendment?
So I'm trying to understand, does the amendment address the mandate on the non-public schools?
Yes, it strikes it.
So what's that? I'm just trying to play catch up here. So originally it did not have it. The House added it and then on the floor, and then now we're taking it out, or?
No, Stacy, would you help me out on that one?
Right, so the House added it and
House added what, to be clear?
the non-public schools.
The mandate.
into the mandate.
Okay.
Right. So we have two different versions here, the Senate bill and the House bill. The Senate bill did not move. And so what this amendment does is it conforms it to the House bill, except for the non-public school provision, and a separate amendment amends the House bill to take out the non-public schools. It's an unfunded mandate on the non-public schools.
So it takes it from a shall to may in both bills.
No, it takes them out, strikes them from the bill. So public schools are mandated, middle and high schools, public middle schools and public high schools are mandated to incorporate these cardiac emergency response plans
Right.
into these venue-specific action plans at athletic facilities. That's the baseline
Middle
requirement.
schools and high schools? Is that-
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
And now with this amendment, non-public schools are not addressed at all.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, additional questions for Stacy? Senator Brooks, your light on? You?
Oh.
Okay. Okay, we have an amendment. Senator Brooks, it's your bill. Do you want to move that amendment? Okay, is there a second?
Second.
From the Vice Chair. Any further discussion about the single amendment on Senate Bill 1024? Raise your hand. All in favor? All opposed? Amendment carries. Okay, we have Senate Bill 1024 as amended on the table. We also have, again, the cross file as well, Senate Bill, House Bill 1219. So they're in the same posture now? Stacey? Okay, so this vote, okay, this vote will count for both bills. Okay, with favorable from Vice Chair Kagan, a second from,
Sorry.
okay, Senator Brooks has a favorable, second from
second.
Vice Chair Kagan. Discussion. Okay, all in favor of these two pieces of legislation, Senate Bill 1024 is amended, as well as the cross file, House Bill 1219, raise your hand. All opposed. Those bills carry unanimously. Let's go down to Senator Lewis Young's bill, Senate Bill 1141. And again, this has a cross file, House Bill 607. Stacy, back to you.
Okay. Senate Bill 1141 and House Bill 607, Community Colleges, Maryland Community College Promise Scholarship Requirements. This bill expands eligibility for the Maryland Community College Promise Scholarship by specifying that certain applicants are exempt from the requirement that applicants must be eligible for in-state tuition and instead requires such applicants to be a resident of the state or have graduated from a high school in the state. The exemption includes individuals who, 1, enroll in a non-credit vocational certificate program, 2, enroll in a sequence of non-credit courses leading to licensure or certification, or 3, participate in a registered apprenticeship program. Exempted individuals are also not subject to the grade point average or free application for federal student aid, the FAFSA submission requirements in current law, unless enrolling in a non-credit program for which a federal Pell Grant may be used. However, exempted individuals may be required to complete an application for admission to a community college. There are amendments only for Senate Bill 1141 to conform it to HB 607 as passed by the House. And what this does is the House struck the provision specifying that certain applicants are exempt from the requirements that applicants must be eligible for in-state tuition, and instead such applicants must be a resident of the state or have graduated from a high school in the state. And they strike provisions that exempted individuals may be required to complete an application for admission to a community college.
We have an amendment that puts it in the same posture as the House cross
Correct.
file, correct? Okay, questions? Okay, we've got Senator Gallion moved the amendments. Is there a second
Yes, here,
from Senator Lewis Young?
sorry.
I'm sorry, are there more?
Senator Kagan asked if there was amendments, and they are on page 5 of the House bill packet. Somehow they got in the wrong one. But they're the House bill packet, which is 39 on page 5. You'll see that these are exactly the same amendments that were put on the House bill.
Many packets, sorry. Thank
Yeah.
you, Stacy.
You're welcome.
Got it.
Okay, we did have a favorable motion on the amendments from Senator Gallion, a second from the sponsor, Senator Lewis Young. Any further questions, Vice Chair Kagan? Okay, all in favor of the amendments, raise your hand. All opposed? Those amendments carry. We now have 1141 as amended in front of us, which is in the same exact posture as House Bill 607. So this will count for both bills. Okay, any discussion? Is there a motion? Senator Lewis Young, the sponsor, moves favorable. Is there a second from Senator Gallion? All in favor of the bill, Senate Bill 1141 as amended, along with the cross file, House Bill 607, raise your hand. All opposed? Those two bills now carry unanimously. Let's go back to voting list number 39. Let's go to House Bill 680, Delegate Morgan, and we're going to go to Dara.
House Bill 680, Environment, Nuclear Power Plants for Emergency Preparedness, Radiation and Emergency Preparedness and Protection Act. This bill is identical in posture to Senate Bill 536, which passed this committee by a vote of 10 votes to 1. The bill establishes the Radiation Emergency Response Program in the Department of the Environment and establishes related duties for the department. The bill establishes 2 annual fees, a $300,000 fee for operational costs of the program, and a $60,000 fee for radiological emergency response preparedness that must be paid by the owner of a nuclear power plant for each nuclear power plant owned. There are no amendments. There's no opposition. House Bill 680 passed the House unanimously.
Okay, it was a 10-1 vote last time. Does anybody remember who the dissenting vote was? We don't need to. Okay. Okay. That was a much bigger dissent. Okay. Any questions? House Bill 680. Any questions on House Bill 680, which did pass this body or this committee 10-1 the last time around? Questions? Sure.
I know the question was brought up on the floor about these fees, which are quite huge, with the smaller nuclear technology coming out. And it was asked if that would apply to each individual one at the same rate. Were we able to get an answer to that?
Senator Brooks has an answer to it.
Yeah, it says. The bill says each nuclear power plant, and regardless of how many, like for instance, Calvert Cliff, there are 2 reactors, but 1 power plant, so it'll be just the 1 fee. But if you do an SMR, small modular reactor, then if it's just 1 plant, then the fee still will apply.
Okay. Any additional questions? Is there a motion on the table from anybody? Okay, favorable motion from Senator Brooks, second from Senator Washington. Okay, we've got House Bill 680, and again, we'll be in the same posture as Senate Bill 536, which passed 10-1 previously. Yes, Senator Gallion, House Bill 680.
So, it's been a while since I had the hearing, but the concern with any kind of feel like this gets passed on to the consumer. My understanding was at the bill hearing, they didn't think that would be an issue, that they kind of like reached an agreement with the companies. Is that accurate? Because there was no opposition, correct? At the
The utility companies, well, the generating company, they were in favor of the bill.
Okay. I'm just, after we've, talked about this, and as we look at the whole picture of session, I was just curious if there's a concern that this would get passed on to our local payers.
We just didn't have any testimony to that effect, as I recall, but I don't have. Dara, do you remember anything on that front?
I do not. There's no testimony that I can see that speaks to that as a concern. So,
okay, that's all we got. So again, the bill didn't pass unanimously last time, so we could do a roll call on House Bill 680. There are no amendments. I think it's clean. So why don't we do a roll call, Memoria, on House Bill 680?
Senator Kagan?
Aye.
Senator Kagan, yes. Senator Augustine?
Yes.
Senator Augustine, yes. Senator Gallion?
No.
Senator Gallion, no. Senator Watson?
Yes.
Senator Watson, yes. Senator Lewis Young?
Yes.
Senator Lewis Young, yes. Senator Brooks?
Yes.
Senator Brooks, yes. Senator Carosa?
Yes.
Senator Carosa, yes. Senator Hester?
Yes.
Senator Hester, yes. Senator Washington?
Yes.
Senator Washington, yes. Senator Salmonere?
No.
Senator Salmonere, no. And Senator Feldman?
Yes, bill carries 9-2. go to the final bill on this list, House Bill 152 from Delegate Boyce, and we're going to go back to you, Darren.
House Bill 152, Department of the Environment Study on Death Care and Funeral Practices. This bill requires the Department of the Environment, in consultation with the Maryland Department of Health and the Maryland Department of Labor, to conduct a study of the environmental and public health impacts of death care and funeral practices in the state. There's no opposition. There is one amendment from Senator Washington, which can be seen on pages 2 through 4 of your packet for voting list number 39. Starts on page 2, runs to page 4. The amendment requires the department to contract with an academic institution or research consultant or firm to conduct a study after issuing a request for proposals. The amendment would alter the study to be the environmental and public health impacts of permitting and licensing of services and practices related to the preparation of the deceased, issues associated with regulation and mitigation efforts to reduce impacts on air quality, land use, and water supply in the state, and the human and public health impacts associated with the services and practices of the death care industry, disaggregated by type of funeral and burial option. I should also add that this bill is identical to a bill that passed the Finance Committee unanimously last year, but was not before this committee.
Okay, Senator Washington.
Thank you. And again, thank you all I'm asking for your favorable for your adoption of this amendment so that the report can really give us the information that we need to make decisions on all of these new industries, these practices. As you recall, I had a lot of concern about the alkaline hydrolysis. Not so much I support the practice, but that we have not evaluated or had an opportunity to consider what permitting would look like, what are impacts on systems. And so this would include it. I have amendments for that alkaline bill, but if we're able to pass this and look at all of them together and really come up with some good information, why the bill says to use an academic institution or a research consulting firm is that in all of the opposition to all of the bills, the department expresses its inability to be able to do certain types of study. In the impacts on environmental permits, they say that they don't have the ability to do community health impacts. So that's it. I'm also asking for a preliminary report so that we can know what the progress is. And then there'll be a second final report in a year. So it doesn't change their timeline a lot. It just gives us an intermediate report so that we know things are moving along.
Okay, Senator Watson.
I think you answered, but just let me be clear. So we typically have, environmental groups who do these impact studies. And what you just said is they don't have the capacity to do it. So we're going to kind of put the responsibility on our academic institutions to think that they can carry this out.
Well, I'm asking, directing MDE to put out an RFP. So to find, say that we want to study these things and essentially get a contract. We've done it in education, so we've done it in a number of contexts. So we're not putting it on our academic institutions, although we do have quite a number of academic institutions, both private and public, that would be quite capable of supporting the department's.
Could potentially
interest
respond to an RFP. Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? Senator Carrozza, then Senator Hester.
Thank you. And maybe this is to the amendment sponsor, or I see MDE is here, but what are the guardrails to ensure that whatever organization conducts the study, that it's not a promotion of any one practice?
Well, thank you. Again, that's a concern that I had in the bill as drafted. The department may consult with industry specialists. So I thought that was not sufficiently objective. And so I I would imagine it would be, yeah, I don't know how to address that one practice isn't approved over another. If it is truly a research and a professional firm, they will just provide the information about each one.
I'm assuming that the Maryland Department of the Environment could
Hey,
put some
hey,
clear language in that would,
Les, do you want to just real quick, just in case anybody has any questions for you, since MD's in the house?
just an assurance that it's not promoting any one practice. How you would safeguard against that?
Yes, that is correct.
How would you do that?
Well, I think the language kind of just does a laundry list of different types of practices and says for us to look at the environmental impacts. So we would do so in a neutral manner. We don't have any type of predetermined outcome for any of those practices.
I wasn't concerned about MDE as much as who you would be contracting with. And if that group, what would the safeguard be to know that there isn't a, promotion of any one agenda or practice from who you would be contracting with?
So that would have to be developed as part of the RFP. We would want to try to ensure that there is neutrality with that entity.
So rather than try to ensure, you'll assure me that you'll have a neutrality piece in the RFP.
Yes, and I believe the amendments at the end of it also include specifically a reference to that.
Yes. Yes, it says that, the academic institution or research consultant selected has substantial and demonstrated experience conducting research and drafting research which informs policymakers and industry practices associated with water, air, land use. And so it's.
But you understand my point about neutrality?
Yes,
Thank
making
you.
sure that there is a neutral outcome to that study, yes.
Okay, Senator Hester and then Vice Chair Kagan.
Thank you very much. I just had a question for either the sponsor of the amendment or council about the difference between 1 and 3 in the amendment. 1 being the environmental and public health impacts of permitting and licensing of these 4 things. And then, so that's both environment and health. But then number 3 is just the human and public health impacts associated with all of these. And so my question is what's the difference between the first list and the second list? And should we include the environment in both?
Yeah. So my environmental is the land or is the, land, air, water. Human and public health is being very specifically about human impacts because those are different. There are different standards or different ways to look at those. So you want to make sure that you're looking at impacts on human bodies of these different practices, but then you're also looking at impacts on the broader environment. So there is a difference. So public health is are the communities, and human health allows for individuals. Let me make sure it's there.
That's helpful. And I guess, but my follow-up question would be is there no environmental impact of some of the things that you have listed under 3, but not under 1, like embalming or grave liners? I would think those might have or vault burials, they might all have different environmental impacts, but maybe, I don't know.
It's also it's drafted a little differently than the way I organized it. So I just would say that it's organized. They felt like it needed to look a certain way. And so I had actually organized it a little differently.
Okay, let's take a question from Vice Chair Kagan, but if we go a little longer, I know ethics has a 5:45. And so there was a couple of things I wanted that we're going to be voting tomorrow. So if there's still questions, let's bump this to the first item we take up tomorrow. Vice Chair Kagan. Yeah.
Chair, question for Les. I'm looking at the way the bill came in from the House. It said that the department would do the study and the Department of the Environment may consult trade groups or organizations and academic institutions to complete the study. That's on pages 6 and 7 on page 2. This is shall contract with an academic institution or research consultant or firm. The fiscal note here was estimated at 100,000. Can you do that with the same amount if we amend this bill? Are we still good with that?
So we are checking on that. We did just get these amendments a couple of hours ago. So we're trying to turn it around. It may be that with that mandatory contracting requirement, it will take that there could be a higher fiscal note
Right.
Based on changes to what the amendments offer.
Okay, well, here.
Could I just ask the sponsor of the amendment a quick question?
Sure.
So Senator Washington, I support you in all that you are trying to do with this. And I have found personally, our conversations about cremation and everything this session to be really educational and interesting. I wonder, in keeping with the bill as it came in, sort of the may consult with, are you open to the idea of may contract with an academic institution and keep the burden with the department? But they may
I'm not
contract with
comfortable
others?
with that.
You're not. Okay, that's fine. I just
Okay,
figured
so
I'd
we have a
ask.
couple issues. We have a
Thank
fiscal
you.
note issue. You're gonna get back to us because we do need, we need to know what the fiscal note is.
And I'll find.
And
the
then, okay, so let's table this
I've
till
done it.
tomorrow. This will be on the vote list tomorrow. Before we go to, so that completes that number, that voting list. Before we take up any more votes, votings 41 and 42, actually, let's just bump these. There's 41 and 42. We'll move that to tomorrow as well. We had a couple of concurrences. I want to get a couple of the other matters out of the way. Alexis, why don't you talk about possible concurrences here on a couple of bills?
All right, so I have 6 for us to consider, 3 of which are sunset evaluations. One is one of the administration's bills regarding permitting requirements or reporting. And then the second is the study on African-American Civil War soldiers. Senate Bill 1, you have a preference on which one?
Yeah, well, before, and then we also want to put on the table SB 1, where there was an amendment put on by the House of Delegates. But back on the sunset issue, Hester, could you I know there was some back and forth about sunsets with the House. So does that implicate this one? Okay, yeah, give us a little update on the whole sunset stuff here, and then we'll.
Okay, I think I think this may be at a higher level, but I can
Okay.
talk to my thinking on the issue. Was that there was some desire for a check-in on these boards in this committee, like at least every 5 years. At the same time, there's a desire in the House to not do these sunsets anymore. And so the compromise that I was thinking through with Vicky Gruber of DLS was that 2 years before we go up for a regularly scheduled audit by OLA, the Joint Audit Committee sends a letter to the committee to be audited saying, hey, can you answer these 5 questions? Assuming those 5 questions came back fine, then there would be no further action necessary until like the next 5 years. But if there was something, that warranted further investigation, then we might, the Joint Audit Committee might actually ask for a formal audit or an OPEGA review. And so that was my suggestion, but I believe that, it's now kind of above me.
Okay, so these are 4 of these 6 concurrences are on the sunset issue, the sunset bills is that what you're
And you
saying?
have 3.
3,
You have
okay.
3.
Okay, well, it still seems a little unresolved. I'm not quite sure. We can not concur. As for conference, we could do a couple different things, but what would you suggest? We could sort of table this till tomorrow. I mean, since you have some ongoing conversations still with the House.
I think we should wait till we have
Okay. Okay, let's for now, let's defer on these 3 sunsets in terms of the differences. Let's go to the 2, what else was there? Was the 2, the permitting bill from the governor. Let's take that one up.
All right, so Senate Bill 472, State Government Permits, Licenses, and Certificates, Transparent Government Act of 2024. The bill, as it passed the Senate, requires principal departments and independent units to create a catalog of information for permits, licenses, and certificates. As amended in the House, the bill removes the Department of Education as a codified principal department of state government, so they would not be required to submit a report. This is apparently in accordance with current practice and upon some correspondence with the Office of the Attorney General.
Okay,
472,
Senate bill.
Senate Bill 472.
Okay, here, I'd like we may on the governor's bill, I'd like to get a little feedback from maybe the administration on, if we're going to concur. I'm sorry, Stacy. Yeah.
Specific reason for that. The authority to establish a system of free public education is in the Constitution given to the Maryland General Assembly. It is not given to the governor or the administration. There are significant issues with making that determination by putting them in as a principal department, which gives the governor more authority than they already have. So at this particular juncture, it was myself who went to the Attorney General's office, said, what are the implications? And they're not good. So in fact, it's very important that this come off. It was inadvertently added and it was not meant, it's never meant to be there. The authority for that is given to the General Assembly. It's not given to the governor under the Constitution.
Okay, so just to cut to the chase, what the House did was,
Right? Take it off. Like she said.
It needs to come off is really what happens.
okay, so we're moving not to concur.
Right.
Okay.
It got added inadvertently. It just needs to come off.
They added.
No,
Okay,
no,
but
I think
that's,
it was added on a floor amendment in the Senate,
Okay.
right?
okay,
Yeah,
And they're correcting
they're
the
taking it
mistake,
off.
correct?
so we would want to concur.
Yes.
if
We do wanna
Because the House did take it off.
Right.
the House did take it,
Yes.
So
okay,
let's move to concur.
okay, so
Right.
we're gonna, okay, is there a motion to concur?
Move to concur.
Okay, Sarah Augustine, second.
Second.
Vice Chair Kagan, all in favor of the motion to concur, raise your hand on 472, the governor's bill. All opposed? Okay, that concurrence carries unanimously, and let's go to the other bill, Senate Bill
448.
448.
So Senate Bill 448, study on African-American Civil War soldiers in Maryland. As it passed the Senate, the bill required the Department of Veterans Affairs in consultation with several entities to conduct a study on African-American Civil War soldiers in the Union Army in Maryland for the purpose of designing one or more appropriate memorials dedicated to them. As amendment in the House, the bill reverts this back to a commission instead of a study. The commission is tasked with making recommendations toward the funding and design of an appropriate memorial. So those are the two significant changes.
Okay, we were told we weren't passing any more commission bills and all this kind of stuff. So, okay, so they made it back to a commission. We took it from study.
Yes.
Vice Chair Kagan?
I'm going to suggest that we not concur. The sponsor was really clear that we might have something at BWI and something in Western Maryland at a Civil War site and some other thing, that they're not all big things. There might be smaller options. And yeah, and as you just said, Mr. Chair, commission is longer, bigger, more official, more comprehensive. I think this could be done more efficiently with something more of a
Okay,
work.
let's have a conversation. Vice Chair, Sarah Augustine.
But it came in as a commission to start, right?
Right.
So we amended it out of being a
Sure.
commission.
448, Senator. SB 448.
SB 448.
So it's actually more what it was.
That's right. It is
It's kind of reverting back to
how it exactly.
how it
was
came
introduced.
in,
Mhm.
how it was introduced. So I would think we would want to make sure, that's really more what the sponsor was.
But he also wanted the option of more than one. Yeah, you're right. I'm now minute. You're right that he said commission. Let's see what the House version was.
Okay, here, you guys, again, when we don't have a
Talk
long
about
list
it.
for tomorrow. Okay, this is another one. Let's get a little clarity from sponsor. Let's figure out the Senate position on commissions versus studies, maybe a little clarity on those. And we'll take this up along with Sarah
Okay,
Washington's
honestly.
amendment tomorrow. Again, tomorrow, by the way, is our last right now, the last day that we're gonna have any bill hearings, okay? So, and then we're gonna have some double sessions this week. So there's ample time to do a lot of work here, so we don't have to spend a lot of time, you know, we want to get it right and talk to whoever we need to talk to. So let's hold this till tomorrow as well, and we'll get a little clarity. The one final thing, because again, ethics has to meet at 5:45, is I just want to get on the table an amendment that the House put onto SB 1. And this committee put obviously spent a lot of time on that bill, and Senator Augustine certainly put a lot of time on it. So Alexis, maybe articulate, just, we're not voting anything here, we're not doing anything. I just want to get this out on the table so people know what the House has done to SB 1 with an amendment. So Alexis and then Senator Augustine can certainly weigh in, and then we'll take this up at an appropriate time, not today, but subsequently. Alexis? And there is a reprint, yeah, so you can take that home and study it tonight.
So I'll run through the changes to the extent that time will allow, but the greatest extent of the changes deal with green power provisions. But first, there was a change regarding marketing rate recovery. So as passed by the Senate, electric or gas companies were not allowed to recover marketing through rates. Yes.
On the reprint, yeah.
Okay, let me find it. Thank you. Okay, so this is on page 10, so lines 24. So as it passed the Senate, this is a broad prohibition against electric companies and gas companies recovering marketing costs through rates. However, as we look on page 11, after line 4, it authorizes the commission to sort of establish regulations determining when a gas company or an electric company is able to recover materials through their rates. The next change relates to generators that supply to industrial or commercial customers. And there's a prohibition that will prohibit them from bypassing, interconnecting to the grid, or connecting their distribution services through an electricity company. And this is in response to conversations about forthcoming data centers. Finding that one. This is so it's on page 13, after line 28. So this prohibits a generator, exactly, supplying electricity to large load customers. They would be prohibited from avoiding interconnection, and they wouldn't be allowed to bypass the distribution system of an electric company.
Okay, why don't you keep going? We'll just put out sort of where the amendments are, and then
this amendment is similar. It is on page 5. This pertains to the definition of retail electric customer. So after page 28, so essentially says that building occupants where the owner manages the internal distribution system are only excluded from the definition of retail electric customer if the provision of electricity supply and electricity generation are not primary functions of the use of the building. And that is on 5 lines 28 through 30 and a little after 30. This is a connected issue to the data center conversation as well. So those two amendments are trying to attack the same thing.
Do you give an example for
Sir Augustine, you feel free to weigh in here.
Yeah, I can just explain what this is about. So these two amendments are trying to contend with if a generator were to basically have a data center that's co-located like right next to it so that it doesn't actually become part of the larger grid. It's not in the transmission, as it were. But as we know from our conversations in here, data centers take a whole lot of energy. So the issue is that the data center takes away a very significant and large amount of that energy. It has to be replaced somewhere else. And that replacement will include transmission lines and other things like that, which is then borne by the ratepayers. So by them not participating in the larger sort of grid, by co-locating and avoiding the shared cost that everybody would have, it ends up costing ratepayers. It will cost ratepayers more money by virtue of doing that, by taking a significant amount of power off of the system that then has to be replaced somewhere else. And an example of that would be like at the nuclear power plant. And at the nuclear power plant, you co-locate a data center right next to it so you don't come onto the power grid at all, but you're taking away the power that we still need. I mean, we still need the power that's coming off of there. Now there's less of it there. We got to get it from somewhere else. We already import a significant amount of power as it is. That's going to cost us more money. We're going to have more transmission coming. That's going to cost us more money. Versus if it were off, they got to then participate in the overall cost of our grid and our system.
And also, I'll just add that you're probably going to get some lobbying on this one. This was an amendment from BGE on the one end, and then Constellation, which is also part of the same excellent family, runs nuclear power plant at Calvert-Cliff, is pushing back. So there's a little bit of a tug of war here. So you probably going to get a visit from somebody along the lines here. But let's go around, and then again, we'll probably have to break in a few minutes because the ethics. I know several of you are on that committee. Senator Gallion, Watson, and then Hester, and then let's let you guys go to
Is
your
there
committee.
any preemption like with federal law on this? You know, how does that?
So in the language, it says, there is a provision that essentially says that, makes clear that federal law was superseded. Says except as provided by federal law on page 13. So it makes sure that there isn't any overstepping in that arena.
Okay, Senator Watson.
I had a visit by one gentleman named Senator Mike Jackson about this issue. So I understand the argument, being right up nip and tuck with the nuclear power plant versus being off. But is it really just an issue that we just haven't done this before and they just need to find what that cost should be and bill them? Because it seems to be, based on my understanding, and it's limited, that the ideal location for the data center is snuggled up next to the power plant for convenience of interconnect. It's just a function of how much should we be billing these folks so that it is fair and equitable as if they were outside, because they're still using up the same amount of energy, whether they're nestled up close or whether they're a little further away. We just have to find what that metric is and force them to pay. What am I missing?
The way that they are proposing to do it, they wouldn't be subject to the same rules as if they were on the grid, because they're not on the grid, because they're co-located and on the property of the generator themselves. We wouldn't have jurisdiction in order to be able to have them pay those additional parts. That's the problem. The problem is that they would then avoid all of the sort of like the transmission responsibilities, number one. And then when they're off, we have provisions that say that the data center has to participate also in the local costs, like what you're talking about. That's not if they are actually not participating in the system, which is how they would be. They would essentially be off the grid. They would just be taking power directly from the producer of the power. So that's why they wouldn't.
Okay, Senator Hester, you're gonna have the last word because you all have to go to ethics. Let me just cut to the chase.
Yeah.
At some point, we have to take a position. We're either concurring or we're not concurring, right? That's kind of what's in front of us, but we're not going to just spring it on you. I want everybody to, think about it, research this. Sarah Hester?
So I just wanted to clarify that this amendment, is this the amendment that prevents this from happening? So it's like pro ratepayer, or is it the amendment that allows it to happen? Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any final questions, observations? Okay, so some of these bills we
one-
didn't get to, well,
One
yeah.
quick thing.
Oh,
I
one
didn't get
final
to
thing.
the green power provisions, but you have the reprint. They begin on page 39. They are substantial. If you have questions, let me know, please.
Yeah. Yeah.
This was at the behest of the PSC, who has the responsibility for the sort of like the administration of it, just to kind of give you that context.
Okay, you've got your reprint.